Welcome back to the 90's Rewind. That was Rage Against the Machine, and my guest this evening, Aziz Ibrahim, is choosing his tracks, and we're chatting through some of those great artists that he's worked with. Now, you mentioned that obviously you came into the Stone Roses around about the same time that John Squire had just left the band, but you went on to work with Ian Brown on solo projects, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, that was all post-Roses, so the demise of the Roses was 97. And the confusion around that time was not just amongst the public, but also amongst the band. You know, I didn't know what was going on or what had happened. And I saw that press release, so I thought I may as well go to the source. So I went round to Ian's house in Warrington, in Lim, sorry. And then I just knocked on the door, and just as, you know, dropping by, and he told me the story of what had gone down, and we were just chatting after that, because then I just relaxed, because it was like, well, it's all over now, so there's nothing else to ask. So we were just chatting and talking, and he was telling me about what his future plans might be, and I just started playing the guitar, playing him a few tunes, and when I played those tunes, he liked them, started writing some lyrics, and all of a sudden we had the basis of some acoustic tunes, you know, acoustic guitar and vocals, lyrics, and we got fired up about these little pieces because there was no pressure, there was no record company, there was no band, there was nothing at all, just two guys, almost like two lads, writing a tune at home, you know, on a council estate in a little room, just knocking a tune up. And that's what we started doing with Unfinished Monkey Business. That's how Unfinished Monkey Business, his solo album, came about. And I would go home to Longside on the Anson estate where I live, and I would write some, because I was fired up, because I thought, wow, Ian really likes the music I'm writing. And I would go home, and I had a little Porter studio, a 4-track cassette playing Porter studio. That, you know, that's what we had in the 90s. If you couldn't afford, you know, the big reel-to-reel machines, or you couldn't afford studio time or whatever. So I mean, that's where I came from. That was my background, and I still work that way. So I would write little pieces of music, then go around to Ian's, and he would like it or not like it, and he would write some lyrics to it inspired by that music. Meanwhile, he was writing stuff at home. And he bought some electronic equipment, mostly kind of hip-hop gear. So it'd be like an old SP1200, the famous Oberheim drum machine, and that the hip-hop guys use. It would be the JP8000 Roland synthesizer, some really fat analog synth tones. And he'd construct some songs, and I'd help him with the equipment, because I'm a techie kind of person. So we came together and compiled almost a complete album. And then the only part of it where we kind of drew into the past were some of the songs we'd written for what would have been, let's call it the third coming for the Stone Roses. We didn't have enough tunes, so because Ian also wanted to use some things for B-sides, so because we're still talking vinyl and
singles,
singles. So we drew on some of that material, and that material was recorded as the Stone Roses, so the people in the band at the time. So a couple of songs came into the album from drawing on that material, which had been pre-recorded. And it is a landmark album. You could tell by reviews in the 90s, in the late 90s at that time, that people didn't get it. They were too interested in perfection and what was the standard and how albums were made. They're supposed to be made like this. But no, you can put two fingers up at convention, at conforming, and create something which is remembering what music is. It's supposed to be fun, or it's supposed to be a statement of your life, of who you are, what you are, how you conduct business, how you live your life. And that's what the album was.
And I think it's quite interesting, because you talk about the creativity that came out of you and Ian working together on that album. Alongside that, you've worked as well, of course, with Paul Weller, who's also been in that situation of being in the Jam and then the Style Council. Where do you go from there? Well, you have a solo career. Do you think it's artists that have had that kind of experience of being in the maelstrom of being in a huge international band? Do you think that there's a creativity that comes from saying, you know what, I am now doing things my way?
I mean, the thing about solo careers, I don't think they always come from, hey, now's the time. I think sometimes it's fate that deals you the hand, that the band implodes, and you're left to your own devices. You know, I don't think Ian wanted to be a solo artist. I think he always wanted to be in a band with his friends, making music. Chemistry is vital for the creation of something unique sometimes, you know, a lot of the time. But also the support around it to nurture it is equally important. And I think history tells that story when you see bands implode and you see the solo careers go off after that. Well, you know, they didn't pay enough attention to that, keeping together and maintaining that the relationships internally. They're vitally and they're equally as important as the relationships at home. I started my solo career with friends from the Smiths, from the Stone Roses, from Oasis, from Marillion, from Primal Scream. From
I love the way that you can just reel these off, and we're all going, "Oh yeah, this is fine. This is just we're only talking some of the best selling bands of probably the last 20, 30 years."
For sure, but for me, I don't ever mean it as a brag. I always mean it as when you have the honour and privilege of working with people of that calibre, they've got so much from their own perspective that I learned from their perspectives. They taught me so much in songwriting. So I was evolving from just being a young kid on a council estate playing a guitar to getting an opportunity to play in bands and joined bands. In the early days, I was in Rebel MC and, as a hip-hop guy and in Asia or with Errol Brown, Hot Chocolate. And it led to these other groups. And I just kept learning along the way. So from guitarist, I became like a songsmith or a musician that could write a tune. And then from that, I was writing music for songs for people like Ian Brown or Paul Weller and or Akala.
Look, I mean, it's absolutely fascinating to talk to you. And I want to just, before we get on to your final music choice, just to very briefly talk about the events that you've been doing in Waterfoot. Just jam sessions. Is it just getting people together? Is it, a case of, trying out new song ideas?
Yeah, I got approached by the Horse and Bamboo, the organisation, and Nesta, who was working for them at the time. So I started contributing, giving my two penneth to the Boo Theatre, and then they had an idea of me running a jam night from the Boo, and we tried one, but because it was just post-pandemic, it worked. It was really fun, and I met a lot of people that attended, and I wanted to continue doing it, but the pandemic kind of prevented us from doing that regularly. So this is just the second one, which I'm looking forward to at the Boo Theatre. I think it's this March. So.
Excellent. Well, as soon as we've got some details of dates and times and whatever, we'll get a readout on the station, and we'll get as many people down to the Boo as possible.
Yeah, or direct them to my website, aziz.co.uk. I'll stick it up there too.
Excellent. Now we've got a slight shift, just in style, musical genre, for your third track. Do you want to tell us about your track you've chosen?
Well, these choices they've been so difficult because, like I said, I could pick my favourite 3 hip hop tracks, and amongst those 3, one of them is The Message by Nas, and it could quite easily be Biggie Smalls, but I think the amount of swearing within the Biggie Smalls,
just 3 minutes of radio silence and we're done.
Ready to die or whatever, it would be difficult to pick one that you could play without too many edits. So therefore, I would probably, and it'd be Tupac as well, but I think that one, why not that one? But let's go with this. I think because of my love for rap and hip hop, I think let's go with The Message, and obviously because the guitar riff in it, which comes from that Sting track. I'm not a big Sting fan, but I do like songs, and I do like certain tracks of his, and that guitar riff, the sample that comes from Sting, Shape of My Heart, is such a cool riff. It's sick, and I think having that in there, the guitar's still part of a hip hop track, and that's my reason. Excellent.
It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you this evening, Aziz. This is The Message by Nas. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, mate.